Hello everyone, welcome to our channel SKM Tutorials Hub. In our today's video, I am going to discuss with you some very commonly asked interview questions on Java. Actually, this is the second part of Java interview questions. I have already made the first part. I am giving the link in the description box so that you can go through that for a better understanding. Let us begin with our first question. What is abstraction in Java? Abstraction is the mechanism of hiding the implementation details from the user and expose only the functionality to the user. In simple terms, we can say that abstraction only displays the relevant attributes of objects and hides the unnecessary details. Suppose when we are driving a car, we are only concerned about driving the car, like start or stop the car, use accelerate or brake, etc. We are not at all concerned about how the actual start or stop mechanism is working or how the accelerate or brake process works internally. So, this is an example of abstraction. There are several advantages of abstraction. Firstly, abstraction reduces the programming efforts and thus reduces the complexity. An end user using some application need not be concerned about how a particular feature is being implemented. He or she can just use the features whenever required. Secondly, abstraction helps to avoid code duplication and it also increases reusability. Since only the important details are provided to the user, so abstraction also helps to increase the security of an application or program. Now, in Java, abstraction can be achieved by interfaces and abstract classes. And you must always remember that interfaces can give rise to 100% abstraction. Let's move on to our second question. Define abstract class and abstract method in Java. So, what is an abstract class? An abstract class is always declared with the keyword abstract. An abstract class cannot be instantiated. That is, we cannot create objects for an abstract class. Such a class can have constructors, static methods, and final methods. It can contain both abstract and non-abstract methods. Now, what is an abstract method? An abstract method is also declared with the keyword abstract as in case of abstract class. An abstract method contains method signature but does not contain any implementation. That is, there will be no method body. A class which contains an abstract method has to be declared as an abstract class. An abstract method is implemented in the subclass. Now, sometimes it may happen that an abstract method is not implemented in the subclass. In that case, you have to declare that subclass also as an abstract class. You must remember that if you inherit an abstract class, then you must provide the implementation to all of its abstract methods. Otherwise, you have to declare the subclass also as an abstract class. Question number 3. Can we declare a class as abstract without having any abstract method? Yes, definitely we can create an abstract class by using the abstract keyword before the class name even if it doesn't have any abstract method. Question number 4. Can we declare abstract methods as static in Java? Whenever we declare an abstract method within an abstract class, then we have to provide its implementation in the subclass. That is, the abstract method has to be overridden in the subclass. But we know that overriding is not possible with static methods. Therefore, an abstract method can never be declared as static in Java. Question number 5. Can we declare static variables and methods in the abstract class in Java? Yes, abstract class can have static methods and variables. The reason behind this is that static variables and methods do not work on the instance of the class. They are directly associated with the class itself. Question number 6. What do you mean by interface in Java? An interface in Java is basically a blueprint of a class, and this interface is used to achieve abstraction. It consists of static constants and abstract methods. So there will be no method implementation within an interface. A class can implement multiple interfaces. So interfaces can help to implement the concept of multiple inheritance. In Java, interfaces are declared using the interface keyword. All methods in the interface are implicitly public and abstract. Just like the abstract class, we cannot instantiate an interface. That is, we cannot create objects for an interface. Now, question number 7. Can we have static methods in an interface? Yes. Since Java 8, we can have static methods in an interface. Such static methods contain the complete definition of the function, and we need to call them using the name of the interface. Question number 8. In a class implementing an interface, can we change the value of any variable defined in the interface? All the variables defined in an interface are by default public, static, and final. So, we cannot change the value of any variable defined in the interface in the implementing class. Let's move on to our next question. What is the difference between an abstract class and interface in Java? An abstract class may or may not contain complete implementation of its methods, whereas an interface can never contain the complete implementation of its methods. An abstract class may contain non-abstract methods, but in case of interface, all methods are abstract. An abstract class can have instance variables, whereas an interface cannot have any instance variables. The visibility in case of abstract class may be public or private or protected. But in case of interface, the visibility will always be public. Abstract class may contain constructors and interface cannot. A class can extend only one abstract class, whereas a class may implement several interfaces. Abstract classes are fast, but interfaces are slow. Question number 10. Why runnable interface is used in Java? Runnable interface is used in Java for implementing multi-threaded applications. Java.lang.runnable interface is implemented by a class to support multi-threading. So basically, if we want that the instances of a class should be executed by a thread, then that class has to implement the runnable interface. Question number 11. How can we make a copy of a Java object? We can use the concept of cloning to create copy of an object. Using clone, we create copies with the actual state of an object. Clone is a method of clonable interface, and hence clonable interface needs to be implemented for making object copies. Let's move on to our next question. Question number 12. What is final keyword in Java? The final keyword in Java is used to restrict the user. The Java final keyword can be used in many contexts. We can use the final keyword in case of a variable. So if we make any variable as final, it means that we cannot change the value of that variable. That is, it will be a constant. We can use the final keyword in the context of a method. So if we declare a method as final, it means that we cannot override it. Similarly, we can use the final keyword in the context of a class, and if we declare a class as final, it means that we will not be able to extend that class. Question number 13. How can we prevent a method in Java from being overridden? By preventing a method in a base class from being overridden means that any class that extends this base class will not be able to override this method. Method overriding works because of runtime method binding feature in Java. So if we force the Java compiler to do static binding for a method, then we can prevent that method from being overridden in the derived class. We can prevent method overriding in Java basically by three ways. Firstly, we can declare the method as final in the base class. So by making a method final, we are adding a restriction that the derived class cannot override this particular method. Secondly, we can declare a method as static. We cannot override the static methods in derived class because static functions are linked directly with the class and not with an object. In case of static methods, static binding takes place. So it's not possible to override static methods in Java. Thirdly, we can make the visibility of a method as private. So private methods of a base class will not be visible in the derived class and hence they cannot be overridden. Question number 14. What is encapsulation in Java? Encapsulation is one of the four fundamental OOPS concepts. In Java, encapsulation is a mechanism of wrapping up the data or variables and code acting on the data, that is the methods, together as a single unit. In encapsulation, the variables of a class will be hidden from other classes and thus they can be accessed only through the methods of their current class. Question number 15. What is the difference between abstraction and encapsulation? Abstraction hides the unnecessary details but shows the essential information, whereas encapsulation hides the code and data into a single unit so that the data can be protected from the outside world. Abstraction can be implemented using abstract classes and interfaces, whereas encapsulation can be implemented by using the different access modifiers such as private, public, and protected. Abstraction can solve an issue at the design level, and encapsulation can solve it at the implementation level. Abstract classes and interfaces are used to hide the code complexities, whereas in case of encapsulation, the getters and setters methods are used to hide the data. Question number 16. What is polymorphism in Java and what are its types? Polymorphism in Java means the ability to take multiple forms. The word polymorphism has been derived from the Greek word poly, which means many, and morph, which means forms. Now, there are two types of polymorphism in Java. First is static or compile time polymorphism, and the second is dynamic or runtime polymorphism. When we overload a static method, we call it as static polymorphism. Since it resolves the polymorphism during the compile time, we can also call it as compile time polymorphism. We can implement such type of polymorphism in Java using method overloading. Now in static polymorphism, during compile time it identifies which method to call based on the parameters we pass. When polymorphism resolves during runtime, we call it dynamic or runtime polymorphism. Dynamic polymorphism can be implemented using the concept of method overriding. In dynamic polymorphism, a reference variable of the superclass is used to call the overridden method. This means based on the object that is referred to by the reference variable, it calls the overridden method of that corresponding class. Now our next question, what is inheritance in Java and what are its different types? Inheritance in Java is a mechanism in which a new class acquires all the properties and behaviors of an existing class. The class whose features are being inherited is known as the superclass or base class. Sometimes it is also known as parent class. and the class that inherits the other class is known as the subclass or derived class. Sometimes it is also known as extended class or child class. Now you can understand that in inheritance, a copy of the superclass members are created in the subclass object. Therefore, using the subclass object, we can easily access the members of both the classes. There are four different types of inheritance in Java: single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and hybrid inheritance. In single inheritance, only one class inherits the properties from another class. As in the example, you can see that class A is the parent class and class B is the child class, which is inheriting from the parent class A. So there is a single parent, that is class A, and a single child, that is class B. In multi-level inheritance, a class derives from another class which is also derived from another class. That is, a class having more than one parent class but at different levels. In the example, you can see that class A is the parent class from which class B is derived. Again, class B is the parent class with respect to class C, which is derived from B. So, class C has more than one parent, that is class A and class B, but they lie at different levels. That's why it is called multi-level inheritance. When a class has more than one child classes or subclasses, or in other words, we can say that more than one child classes have the same parent class, then such kind of inheritance is known as the hierarchical inheritance. In the example, you can see that two child classes, that is B and C, have been derived from a single parent class, that is A. Hybrid inheritance is a combination of two or more types of inheritance. In the example, you can see that class A is the parent class from which two child classes B and C have been derived. So this part represents the hierarchical inheritance. Again, class D is being derived from class B, so it's a single parent and single child. Thus, this part represents the single inheritance. This example is a combination of single and hierarchical inheritance. That's why it is an example of hybrid inheritance. Next is question number 18. Does Java support multiple inheritance? So the answer is no. Java does not support multiple inheritance. This is in order to avoid complexities and ambiguities in the relationship among classes. Let me explain it through this simple example. Suppose there are two parent classes A and B, and both of them defines a function named display. Now class C is a child class which derives from both the classes A and B. Now if we create an object of C and call the function display through it, then which display function will it call? Will it call the display function of class A or the display function of class B? So there rises an ambiguity. That's why Java doesn't support multiple inheritance in order to avoid these ambiguities. Question number 19. How can we restrict inheritance for a class so that no class can be inherited from it? In order to restrict inheritance for a class, we can use the keyword final with the class name. If a class is declared as final, then that class can never be extended by any other class. Next is question number 20. I want my class to be developed in such a way that no other class, even derived class, can create its objects. How can I do so? Here you see that if we declare the constructor of a class as private, then it will not be accessible by any other class, and hence no other class will be able to instantiate it. Thus, the formation of objects will be limited to itself only. In this way, we can develop the class so that no other class will be able to create its objects. Question number 21. What is the use of the super keyword in Java? The keyword super can be used to access the data members or fields of a parent class. It is used when both the parent class and the child class have the same fields. The super keyword can also be used to invoke the parent class methods. It is used if the subclass contains the same method as parent class. That is, the method is overridden. So whenever a parent and a child class have the same named methods, then to resolve ambiguity, we use the super keyword. Finally, the super keyword can also be used to invoke the parent class constructor. So one more important thing is that the super keyword can be used to call both the parametric and non-parametric constructors depending upon the situation. Question number 22. What is the difference between this and super keywords in Java? The this keyword represents the current instance of a class, whereas the super keyword represents the current instance of the parent or base class. The this keyword is used to call the default constructor of the same class, whereas the super keyword is used to call the default constructor of the parent or base class. The this keyword is used to access the methods of the current class, whereas the super keyword is used to access the methods of the base class. Let us move on to our next question, question number 23. Is it possible to use this and super both in a constructor in Java? This calls another constructor in the same class, whereas super calls the constructor of the parent class. So both are constructor calls, and we know that constructor must always be the first statement. But we cannot have two statements as the first statement. Hence, either we can call super or we can call this from the constructor, but not both. Question number 24. Does a class inherit constructors of its superclass in Java? We already know that constructors are special and have same name as the class name. So if constructors were inherited in child class, then the child class would contain a parent class constructor, which is against the constraint that the constructor should have the same name as the class name. It's because the child class and the parent class cannot have the same name. That's why a class can never inherit the constructors of its superclass in Java. Constructors are only used to initialize a valid state of an object. But remember that the superclass constructor is automatically added in the child class constructor if there is no explicit call to the super or this. Question number 25. What is the order of call of constructors in inheritance? In case of inheritance, when a new object of the derived class is created, then first the constructor of the superclass is invoked and then the constructor of the derived class is invoked. Question number 26. What is the base class of all exception classes in Java? In Java, java.lang.throwable is the superclass of all exception classes, and every exception class is derived from this base class. Question number 27. What is finally block? The finally block in Java is a block that is used to execute important code such as closing a file, connection, stream, etc. It is always executed whether exception occurs or not, and also whether exception is handled or not. A finally block is always associated with a try block. The finally block always execute even if the try block contains control transfer statements like return, break or continue. For each try block, there can be 0 or more catch blocks, but only one finally block. So, you can understand that the finally block is useful for more than just exception handling. It allows the programmer to avoid having cleanup code accidentally bypassed by a return continue or break statement. Putting cleanup code in a finally block is always a good practice even when no exceptions are anticipated. Next is question number 28. What is the difference between throw, throws and throwable in Java? Throw is a keyword in Java which is used to throw exception from method or executable block. Throws is another keyword in Java which is used in conjunction with method signature, and it signifies the kind of exception the method can throw. Whereas throwable is the superclass of all exceptions and errors. Question number 29. Is it compulsory for a try block to be followed by a catch block in Java for exception handling? Try block needs to be followed by either catch block or finally block or both. Any exception thrown from try block needs to be either caught in the catch block, or else any specific tasks to be performed before code abortion are put in the finally block. So it is not mandatory to put catch block after try block until and unless the try block is followed by a finally block. Question number 30. Is there any way to skip finally block of exception even if some exception occurs in the exception block? Finally block is always executed when an exception occurs, and the only way to skip finally block is by aborting the code forcibly by writing the following line of code at the end of the try block, that is system.exit 0. That's all for today. Hope you have liked our video. If you like it, then please hit the like button and share it with your friends. If you have still not subscribed to our channel, do subscribe it and also press the bell icon for getting the latest updates.